Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Today we are joined by a former Nevada Gaming Control Board Investigation Division agent. He is a Las Vegas gaming and administrative law attorney with more than 20 years experience advising gaming, liquor, and cannabis businesses. Welcome, Dennis Gutwald, to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you. You're very well informed.
I didn't know you did cannabis. Are you allowed to do cannabis?
I do cannabis.
Really?
Yeah, my practice sounds like a good Sunday afternoon.
I did not know you could do cannabis. I thought they were mutually exclusive things.
Only for licensees.
Oh, okay, for me. But you get to dabble in both.
I get to dabble in both, and liquor, a lot of liquor too. But cannabis has been very entertaining.
Well, that doesn't seem fair. But Dennis is very special to me. He's been my gaming attorney since I became licensed and got into the business. He helped me navigate the waters as a 26-year-old when I first started trying to get into this. He got me a key employee license, and then ultimately, not a license, but he got me a key employee status, and then ultimately licensed as a licensee. He's been through there. He stood up with me during the investigation process, which was nerve-wracking as a 29-year-old, to be honest with you.
I think he was the youngest casino owner ever.
Wow.
Well, I don't like to call myself a casino owner.
Casino operator.
Casino operator, correct, yes. And thank you. I am very proud of that.
I only represent the salt of the earth.
You only get the best.
Gaming
as I'm
control
sure we'll
boards,
hear.
agents realize that whenever I bring somebody forward to them, they realize it's Dennis. He only brings us the salt of the earth.
Okay.
Legit people like myself.
You mentioned you had to become a key employee, and I know that here key employees aren't allowed to gamble on property. What makes a key employee? Because I'm always wondering who is a key employee.
There's two types of key employees. There's the key employee who runs the whole place. That's the general manager. And then there's another type of key employee where it's people who give comps, supervise. That's a very broad category. But in Jonathan's case, that particular definition, that's a key employee who runs the whole hotel, who's totally responsible for it. When there's a problem, that's the person the Gaming Control Board's going to talk to. And he's it.
Has the roles changed over the years? I was talking to someone who's, and actually, she's going to be coming on the podcast. She's going to be our new general manager. And she was asking me about whether she needs to get a key employee. And I said, well, none of our other general managers have had key employee status because I'm the licensee. But was there a time a few years ago, 20 years ago, where all managers or other management had to get a key employee, or is it just the one position?
It's just the one position. Now, if you're an officer or owner of the entity, you have to get licensed. And eventually, you became the owner of the licensee. But there used to be no requirement for a key employee to get licensed, but the Gaming Control Board over time decided, hey, we want somebody who's on the ground, who's there 40, 50 hours a week, that person to be licensed. We want them to
hold on, 40 hours a week, that's it? What have I been doing this wrong this whole time?
You've made a terrible mistake.
What have I been doing this whole time? It's a discretionary effort.
Discretionary effort.
And it's actually an interesting week at the Gaming Control Board because Bryn Gibson just stepped down.
That's correct. And
he's the chairman.
He's the chairman, and we have an interim chairman, Brittany Watkins. And so we're going to see what the new governor chooses to do, whether keeping her or bringing somebody else in. And so we have new people to deal with. Historically, having dealt with all these people, there's always been very good people at the board. It's an organization that tends to avoid politics, and all us gaming attorneys want is a level playing field. We just want to get up there and know that we're going to have somebody who's fair, and it seems to always work out that way. Despite the political appointments, it comes out fairly good.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it should be a political appointment, but obviously it is. Any idea who the new governor might appoint?
No idea whatsoever. Higher people know, but not.
For the sake of the listener, just explain the difference between the board and the commission and the structure of the Gaming Control Board, because I think that might be useful.
I'd love to. The Gaming Control Board is composed of 3 governor-appointed individuals who work full-time, and you could compare them to a prosecutorial agency. They're the agency that does all the investigations, does all the audits of the hotels to make sure they're paying their taxes, make sure licensees are doing what they're supposed to. They look for cheaters, make sure gambling is conducted the way it's supposed to. And they run the business of regulating gaming in Nevada. And there's a chairman and 2 other individuals. The commission is 5 part-time individuals that have other employment. Many of them are attorneys, but we've had doctors, bankers. And so those individuals vote make the final decision. The Gaming Control Board does the investigation. They look at applications. When those applications are before them, they make a recommendation on that application. And then a couple weeks later, the commission decides whether they will approve that recommendation and go with it or not. About 95% of the time, the commission goes with what the board says. The board does a great deal of the work, but not always. And that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, the board is the one cross-examining you, essentially.
That's where they build the record.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are going to investigate you. They are the ones who make you pay a lot of money to be investigated. And then once that investigation is complete, they make a recommendation, and they build a record, a very thorough record, usually at a public meeting, and then the commission votes on that. The commission will also make a public record, but the real digging, the real work typically happens at the board unless the commission decides there's an issue that the board didn't look at deeply, but that very rarely happens.
You said there's 3
board members and 5 commissioners.
And so that's who, when you have to go in front of all of them, or just the board members?
You go in front of the board members first, the 3. Mm-hmm. They, like Dennis said, they build a record mm-hmm. against you or for you, and then they make a recommendation, and the commission ultimately.
Got it. I always imagine you standing there in front of like 20 people.
No, it's just 3. It felt like 20. Board member Terry Johnson was attacking me on behalf of 20 people. It felt like.
Yeah, there's often a good cop, a bad cop, and then a middle arbiter.
And you were the investigation division agent? That's one of the 3 roles?
The agents work for the board.
Okay.
And they have a bunch of agents, and I did that a long time ago. And so I was the person who went out and investigated people. My goal was to find dirt. It was very entertaining. Inquiring minds want to know.
Did you find a lot of dirt on people?
Surprisingly, yeah.
Anyone good? Any good stories?
None that I can get into because all of that stuff is kept confidential.
What you need to do is write a book one day about anonymous people, but tell the stories that you discovered.
And one of the interesting things is, for restricted gaming licensees, I think one or two DUIs is actually a requirement to get the license. I mean, it's just so prevalent. I would say a third of the applicants, maybe a fourth, have arrests of all applicants. It's kind of surprising, but one of the things that's really...
so I was really
Jonathan?
easy then.
You were a piece of cake.
What part were you, Jonathan?
I was easy.
As I said, salt of the earth.
I wasn't in that category.
But one of the interesting things about Nevada that's different than the other regulations, and I've really come to appreciate it over the years, is Nevada believes in rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. Our people can come up, and I've told people, you can get, as long as you disclose everything, if you're honest. If you fail to disclose it, that's a crime of today. That's a problem of today. But I can get you licensed for just about anything other than fraud, because it involves lying, icky sex crimes because they're gross, and cheating at gambling. I said, manslaughter, I can work with you.
Oh my gosh.
Nevada's regulators understand people are human. Nevada is a place that was built with very human people, and they believe.
Is someone licensed who has committed manslaughter?
In the past, yes. And
I guess.
And when I was an investor, no mobsters, okay. No mobsters.
If you're in the black book, you're not getting a license.
You're not getting a license. No.
But I was under the impression, Dennis, if I got a DUI as a licensee, which I've never had, but if I did, that's grounds for removing my license.
That's grounds for questioning your license if it's recent, all right? But there's so many applicants that have had DUIs, countless.
Okay.
It's very common. Bankruptcies. Again, people made mistakes in the past, and a lot of times they've come out here and made their lives better. And the Nevada Gaming Control Board, as long as you disclose it and understand you made mistakes, it's an arduous, hard process. But in the end, it works out. Jonathan will attest to that. It was a hard process, but we all got through it. It's not, and it's hard for many applicants.
I'm kind of stuck on the manslaughter thing.
That was a long time ago. The guy walked in on his wife, and she was cheating, and he shot the guy, went to jail. It was many years before I got to the board.
And he passed?
Eventually.
Passed the licensing.
He did his time, he got out, and he got back in.
All right.
As I said, there's nothing that guarantees that you won't get licensed. There's some things. Like I said, if you're caught in fraud, liars are often viewed as liars forever. But when I was an agent, I worked on a guy who had a couple of bank burglaries, and he did a number of years in jail for that. He got a non-restricted gaming license.
Bloody hell.
Bank, like money?
Yeah, he broke into a bank a couple times.
What's wrong with that? Smart.
I don't know if you're like working with money. I feel like maybe you should
Rob a bank.
not be stealing it.
Did you ever deal with Benny Binion?
No, I just watched that from afar with admiration.
Yeah, and we're going to ask Lisa ask this in a second, but you've been here a long time. You have a long history in how you came to Vegas. But you mentioned it, so let's just talk about it now. Let's get it out of the way. What do you think about the Black Book?
I think it's excellent.
Excellent.
I love the idea. Hunter Thompson described Circus as what America would have been if Nazi Germany won the war. The Black Book is really it's a privileged license. So we protect our industry and we keep bad people out. Not many people get in it, and if you mess up that bad, it isn't. The Black Book, it's much more of a responsibility for licensees than the individuals that are in it. They have to keep bad people out.
Right.
And that's just better for everybody.
But you don't think it's unconstitutional?
It's that they've tried to prove it's not, but this is a privileged license. Having a gaming license is a privileged license. It's not a constitutional right. So if the licensees insist on associating with bad people, it's going to cost them because, again, it's a privilege. It's not a right.
But doesn't that go against what you just said, which is, and I'm not speaking on Oscar Goodman's behalf here because he usually is the one attacking the Black Book, but you said Nevada is a forgiving state. So somebody committed a crime, usually in the gambling sphere. Mm-hmm. After a period of time, you can never get out the Black Book until you die.
No, there's a process for it. It's
never happened, though.
Yeah, it's probably... Well, first somebody's got to go through that process.
Right.
All right, and that's going to be an expensive process. And odds are, again, there's certain things you just can't be involved in. But you don't get put in the Black Book for manslaughter. You don't get put in the Black Book for being involved, having the drug issue in your life. It's crimes or issues directly related to the gaming licensee. Human trafficking is the one that they're starting to focus on now. Yeah, those people... It's going to be really hard to rehabilitate them. You're just not going to see it. Cheating at gambling, as I said, that's a huge problem for the industry.
I don't think somebody's been put in the Black Book in a decade, even for cheating.
No, they've been putting people in the Black Book.
They have been?
Yeah, and there's.
I know there's one now about the sex trafficking. I did see that, but I didn't know that they were still putting people in.
Yeah, cheaters mostly. There
was the two dealers that cheated the craps game at the Bellagio. They got put in.
Yeah, it happens. It isn't a major part of Nevada's gaming regulatory system. It's just there's times. It was designed for another time when you had the mob here. And that's what's different than, say, gaming in Europe is gaming first started in Nevada and we had mobsters. And we dealt with those very well. We got them out of the industry. And the Black Book was a good tool to ensure that we kept them out.
Okay, so where are you from, and how did you end up in Las Vegas?
It took us 20 minutes to get there.
I was born and raised here. I'm a product of the radiation in the water. It's quite tragic. I was born here when the town was maybe 150, 60,000 people. In the valley, there was 150, 60. Now there's about 2.1 million.
Wow.
And so I I was always here. My parents and my relatives are kind of the American dream story and typical Las Vegas stories of people coming from back east and making a life here. It's a good story, but that could take several other podcasts. So.
This is your first ever podcast, is it not?
This is my first podcast of ever, any type of podcast.
Hopefully you'll listen to it as well.
I may do that.
So when you grew up here, did you have any jobs any fun jobs?
I worked at my aunt's restaurant, the Venetian restaurant, from the age of 12 till about 23.
Wow. So
if anybody was here from about 1975 till about 1986 or so, I probably bust your tables because vast numbers of people came through the Venetian. It was arguably the best Italian restaurant in town. We had governors, movie stars like Frank Sinatra, singers, mobsters like Tony Spilotro. They all came through the restaurant.
Wow.
And I bust their tables.
To take the story full circle, we had Larry Ruver on the podcast, and his mother was the owner of the Venetian.
His mother was the owner of the Venetian. That was my Aunt Ange, and she was my second mother. My mother passed away when I was 13, so I worked in her restaurant. Pretty much, I learned life at that restaurant. I learned how to cuss from her. I learned how to work hard, and I learned how to give from her. Wow. Hugely generous individual, and I'm still, I suppose, a busboy dishwasher at heart in many ways.
Didn't she just pass away this year?
She just passed away in May, so Thanksgiving without her will be a little bit lonelier.
Sorry.
But it was a marvelous, magnificent life. She was 98 years old, and what she was able to accomplish. She had a junior high school education, and her and her sister created restaurants out here. Her sister was Mary Perry. Mary Ann went on to start the Bootlegger, but they started the Venetian together.
Wow.
And Mary lived to 102. They came out here in 1943, and to me, it's an inspiration. I'm kind of the slacker of the family. I became an attorney at 40, but I look at these relatives who had restaurants. I look at my cousins and what they've accomplished, and it's pretty inspirational.
And your other cousin's the lieutenant governor?
That's right, the former lieutenant governor Lorraine Bono Hunt, Lorraine Hunt Bono, excuse me.
So working in Venetian, and we had a dinner in here. I don't remember if you were at it. You might have been to celebrate Angie's birthday.
I was there.
And we did the neck bones. We made her famous neck bones. She helped our chef with the recipe, and we cooked the neck bones that were famous at the Venetian once upon a time.
Yeah, there was mobsters who used to have those neck bones. They'd reserve a seat on a jet airplane and have them flown to Chicago.
Wow. Wow.
We've heard from Oscar, we've heard from Larry. Any specific stories or clients that stand out for you that used to come to the Venetian? I think there was the old Sheriff Lamb.
Oscar, the Lambs. Oscar was there a lot with his family. He had a wonderful family, and Frank Sinatra being there was very entertaining. There was a time Tony Spilotro was running around the place that I was too young to realize that was the problem. I was probably 13, 14 years old when that was going on. And then just a huge number of people. The one that I really appreciated was Governor Gwynn. He used to come into the place, and I bust his tables. He always got a kick out of... I was going to college, and he was very entertained by all the classes that I took that were strange, like Chinese, primitive law. And so when I was getting ready to graduate from undergraduate school, he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Oh." I was pretty directionless at that time, and so I started working at his bank. Huh. And he was in at least a couple of times a week with his wife, and he really loved the chicken doré there. And eventually, he ran for governor. I helped hang up signs for him and all that. And then I went for law school, and he was my recommendation letter. So I was getting in, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're definitely getting in with that. It's a shame that that doesn't exist. Like, there's not really. I mean, the town's so big now, so it's hard to have that. But I guess Piero's would be the closest thing to that, where like,
Agreed.
you know, you're going to go there and see familiar faces and know people. I'm having dinner there tonight at Piero's.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be the closest thing to it.
It still is, I would say. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was the place, and just growing up there and seeing how Las Vegas worked was really, really cool.
So then you said you made the decision then to get into law at 40. Like, what happened in between there?
You know, I started out.
Oh, you were a journalist. You were an investigator for the gaming.
First, I was an
Board.
accountant, and that's really boring. You know, that speaks for itself. Why did you leave being an accountant at a bank? Because I was an accountant at a bank. And I had a yen for law enforcement, and the FBI didn't want me because I didn't have a law degree at the time or a CPA or speak a weird language. I was ready to go into the ATF. They had a hiring freeze. My goal was Bogota, but that didn't happen. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, I dusted the written and physical on that, but there was a stretch test. And but for 1 inch, I would be a retired Metro police officer
Really?
today. And so I ended up I had several relatives, including my cousin Larry and Uncle Lindo, who said, you can never go wrong working for the Gaming Control Board. And so I started there. And what the Gaming Control Board does is you see how the town is interconnected. There's only probably 1,000 people in the state that are really guiding and making it, and I'm grossly overestimating. And at the Gaming Control Board, through your investigations, you see how everything is interlinked. And that's what's really remarkable about the state. Even though we've grown like crazy, there's still a very small group of people that are deciding its destiny. We're a very unusual state. There's only 6 power bases, used to be 5. There's government, there's gaming, there's business developers, unions, mining, and now tech's coming on. And that's kind of it. So you can know everybody here. We don't have a lot of, in California, there's no way to figure out everybody who's making the decisions. Here, it's still very grassroots.
It's a small town. So what's the day-to-day of a gaming investigator? For example, during COVID, I know they became like mask enforcement agents, but they must have something better to do than that on a day-to-day basis.
Well, there's different divisions. There's a number of them. There's the tech guys who look at how both the technology within the board and assessing the machines. I was an investigative agent. My job was to dig for dirt. You know, the applications would come in. We would make sure that the person was good, good for gaming. And the most important thing was for them to be honest and candid, and not have something too recent in their past that would screw up their investigation. But if they were very honest and candid and could deal with their issues, and a lot of people have issues, but they could get through the process. And so that was my job, was to be an investigator. I did that for about 7 years. And I was in law school at the time, going to law school at night for the last 2 years of that. And then one of the gaming attorneys in the state, arguably the best, a guy named Frank Schreck, said, if you're going to work full time, come work for me. And so I ended up working for him for a long time.
And Frank Schreck's in the building to the west of the plaza across the train tracks is that big, nice office building. That's the Water Authority, but Brownstein hired Faber Schreck is also there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Frank's basically the best name. Well, I shouldn't say that, but one of the top name attorneys in the entire state for.
He is, and even in the country.
Wow.
He's it. My colleague Gage Burnett's coming along, former chairman of the Gaming Control Board. I put them.
He was the head when I was going through the licensing with was Burnett.
Yeah, he's those are the top 2, but Frank has been there forever. He was Steve Wynn's attorney, pretty much the attorney for a lot of the big gaming clients. Has handled some really complex cases, and I worked under him for 16 years, and I got to see everything. He was a tremendous mentor to me.
How close did you get to work together? You did cases together?
He shot the buffalo, and I skinned it over and over.
That's a metaphor, Lisa.
He wasn't. He wasn't going to be filling out application documents. I dealt with the agents at the lower level a lot. If there were big issues, I would let him know. But we worked on everything together for the time I was there.
I mean, obviously, we're not going to talk about specific clients here, but you mentioned you had Steve Wynn. I know from our prior guest that we had on this podcast, you had Tim Poster when he did the Golden Nugget. Any other licensings that stand out in your mind for other individuals?
There's been a lot of entertaining licensing. I wish I could go into details more, but working with Frank, we did major casino openings throughout the whole state. So the Cosmopolitan, Planet Hollywood, Eastside Cannery. I can't keep track of all the major hotels we got licensed. Then there was the bankruptcy period where we handled Stations Casinos bankruptcy. We helped a big private equity company buy Caesars that was a $30 billion transaction. Wow. First of its kind in the nation. And so we worked on some tremendous stuff. The one I kind of remember very fondly is actually the Cosmopolitan. It was built by Deutsche Bank, finished up by Deutsche Bank, who inherited it because of the great financial collapse we had in 2009. And they, to the benefit of our town, chose to finish and complete it and build it when the economy was tanking. And so in 2010, we got it approved and it opened. And I was looking up at the Cosmopolitan on the sidewalk. I was sitting out there. There's crowds of people on each side that were barricaded off until the opening. So I'm standing on the strip sidewalk, about 300 feet of sidewalk that's completely empty. Throngs of people on every side. And I'm looking up at the Cosmopolitan thinking, well, we won't be opening up one of these for a while. Oh, wow. Yeah. And it took probably 4 or 5 years before another casino.
Yeah, that was a gutsy time to do that.
Yeah.
Well, they opened very close as well to City Center in Aria.
MGM and the Deutsche Bank kept things going, and a lot of people stayed employed because of their gutsy decision.
Right.
What was it like, speaking of madness, working with Jonathan to get his gaming license?
Easy, because he got it. He understood the process. The hardest part with my job is having people understand the process. Mm-hmm. And all the work usually is up front, is helping them to understand the process. And if there's going to be a problem with me getting somebody through, it's because they don't get it. So working with Jonathan was a delight because he got it. There was a journey because we had to get him licensed as a key first and then eventually as an owner. We got that transition to occur, and it went very well.
The real question is, the madness really was Poyu, our chairman, for agreeing to allow a 28-year-old to get licensed. He's the one who had the courage to give me the opportunity to go through that process and get the license. So great credit goes to him. But, I often say to Dennis, I would imagine in hindsight, even now, 8-9 years later, it would be much harder to get me licensed just because I have 3 children, I have a wife, I have different sort of investments. When you're in your 26, there's no one to talk to about a reference. You have one bank account. You have no trusts. You have nothing.
That is exactly right. Whenever I getting somebody licensed, the younger a person is, the easier they are if they don't have a criminal record, because lawsuits, you have to disclose every lawsuit that you've had or a company you've had. Those add up over the years. You have to disclose every place you've lived.
You got to give your tax returns.
And everything gets more complex the older you get.
They took my cell phone for an hour and did something with it. I don't know what they did on it.
They can download all the information on your cell phone. They could show up at your office and say, we're going to download your laptop. They did that to Tim Poster. Out of the blue.
I heard a story that, and I don't have any homes outside of Las Vegas, so it wouldn't work for me. But if you have a home in another city, country, or anywhere in the world, they can show up at that home unannounced and ask to tour it and even see what's in the safe. Is that?
That's correct.
Well,
they don't do it as much anymore, but the safe checks they'll still do on occasion. We try to warn our clients that it's a possibility. They'll go to a person's home and just say, in the middle of an interview, they'll say, we want to talk with you for about 3 hours, just go through your application. And then about halfway through it, agents have said, all right, we're done with the interview. We want to go to your house and look what's in your safe. So, hopefully they don't have body parts or.
Oh my God.
I had heard that a very prominent licensee, I don't even think he was there, but he had a home in Boston, and they showed up there and told the housekeeper to open the safe.
Yeah, that's when they've gone off the rails a little bit. That's unusual.
Who was that? Can you say?
Usually they give a little warning, unless they really think that the person's got something there that the person will remove otherwise.
Right.
So again, that doesn't have the agents. The vast number of them are balanced, reasonable. They have a lot of institutional experience, so that's unusual, unless they think that guy's hiding something, and it might disappear if they don't surprise the guy. But there's a lot of things they can do. They ask for flight logs. That's always very entertaining. They'll ask
Flight logs if you have a private plane.
if you have a private plane.
I see. I didn't have a private plane either.
Yeah. See, you're
There's so much
easy.
so much I didn't have that made
You've
this process easier. But
you've shared some of the issues that you had.
Yeah, I don't even think that we were prepared, even in the interview process, because they didn't grill me in the interview process, but I had placed sports bets, technically illegally, in the UK, but it made more sense because I was from the UK and I had a UK betting account, but what I was doing was illegal. And it came up not really that much in the investigation, but then during the hearing...
The agents, he fully disclosed everything. He was completely candid about it. It was clear that he wasn't intentionally trying to break the law. Mm-hmm. He just had a VPN that allowed him to bet in the UK and didn't realize you can't use that here in Nevada. And so we disclosed all of that to the agents, and the agents were very comfortable with it. But board members want to build a record, and they did. They've made it. Board member Johnson really dug into that.
It was also during a time when online sports betting was becoming prominent in America, and they wanted to build a record, but also put forward all the issues. I actually think I helped them.
You did.
I think I helped even the sports betting companies, because I remember one of the sports betting companies called me and said, well, tell us what you were doing here so we can make sure this doesn't happen anymore, because they don't want to even take, if they take that bet, they get in trouble.
And there were a lot of people in the industry that had those same accounts, and it just is a good warning, if you will, to other applicants or other people in the industry. Oh no, this isn't allowed. And so they built a very good record, and Jonathan got through it easily. Again, Gaming Control Board works with people. They're not out to destroy people generally, unless there's a real issue with them. And he got through the process, but it was hard. Especially for a young man who's trying to run a casino and all that. But
any recent denials that you can remember? I was trying to think about it when in preparing for our conversation. Has anyone been denied a license lately?
The big one that we saw recently was Blaine Gabois.
Oh yeah, but that was the slot machine guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was he doing?
He got
public, right? Everything's public.
Yeah. I'll talk about the public parts, and I don't represent him. He got a limited license because he had some tax issues, and the Gaming Control Board gave him the benefit of the doubt and approved him for a couple of years. When you get a limitation like that, you're supposed to walk the walk and talk the talk. You can't. It's really hard to appear before the board and address those issues. Address new issues when you're on a limited license. A limited license is where you're approved, but it's only for a limited amount of time. The interesting thing about Nevada and why investigations are so intense, like no other jurisdiction, is the regulators get one bite at the apple here. They approve you, but there's no renewal process. So Jonathan's licensed at this place until he leaves. Mm-hmm. If he goes to another place, then he has to get licensed, but he's not going to have to ever renew his application. But if they have an issue with somebody or have doubts about somebody, the Gaming Control Board says, we'll give you a chance. We're not really thrilled with you, but we'll license you for a couple of years and see how you did. And he came back with other issues. And that was really interesting because the board actually recommended for another 1-year limitation, and the commission didn't agree, and he went down, and that was painful to watch from a gaming attorney's perspective, to see the questioning, and it was all done via Zoom, which isn't the best format to be able to represent a client.
Right.
You know.
Now it's well, but hopefully that's changing soon.
Yeah, it's done. Everything's
Everyone's
live
back to
now.
in person.
Yeah, it's very rare that you'll see a Zoom, but it was all done on Zoom, and yeah, that was tough. But yeah, he was denied.
Okay. Yeah, nothing downtown that stands out to me though. Everyone's pretty kosher downtown.
It's a great group.
Everyone's had a good run here.
You guys are survivors. I mean, you've made it's a lot. This is a lot more work to succeed downtown than it is on the Strip, and the innovation that you guys have down here is remarkable. You just keep making it happen. So we're excited about that. You know, as gaming attorneys, just watching what you've done with downtown. I love it.
What are some of the interesting cases that you worked on that shaped the gaming history?
There's just been an evolution. I've worked on a lot of private equity companies, and private equity is what buys casinos now to a large degree. There aren't a lot of big publicly traded gaming companies that are buying other casinos. It happens, but those companies are already licensed here. But you'll see private equity companies take a much bigger role in the investment in these communities, and I've been involved in those. More recently, what's been very exciting, we got a company called FSB licensed. It's a sports technology provider, and it represents kind of an evolution in what's happening in gaming and sports betting in Nevada for two reasons. One, a lot of the big European sports betting companies want to come to Nevada. I didn't really think that was going to happen because we have a very competitive market and not a lot of people. With online sports betting or sports betting in general, you need a lot of people. Nevada doesn't have a lot of people, but we tend to be the center of the universe for gaming, and the clients that they want to do business with are all licensed here. They want to sell their product. And so what we're seeing is in Nevada is these companies getting licensed before either the hotels operated their sports books by themselves, or they had a company like William Hill come in and run a sports book separately. And those were the two ways that occurred. Now you have these companies coming in, and they provide a great deal of support and provide almost a turnkey sportsbook operation for casinos to operate their sportsbooks so that they don't have to run it themselves. That's a big evolution and goes with how sports betting is spreading throughout the whole country.
But Dennis also helps, for example, like I'll call Dennis when we're building the carousel bar. Because that's a new area, and I'm saying, well, it's the front of the building, it's outside. We want to make sure we can put the 8 slot machines at the bar, and he'll help with that kind of thing as well. So it's not just getting a license; it's also operating within the framework of that license.
And figuring
and
out.
And those are outdoor.
So we had table games at the pool, which we don't have anymore, but we did have them up there.
Yeah, there's so much more to gaming and liquor than just having the license. There's a whole bunch of land use issues. You have to have the right zoning. Then you have to get special use permits. There's a lot of operational issues, though. Jonathan's very good at dealing with the gaming control board. He's got very good people in house that work very well with the enforcement division. But there's a lot more to this than just getting the places licensed. And so I've helped with getting liquor and gaming put in at places where there might be a question. It's hard to expand gaming outside of the footprint where you had gaming. There's just been more and more restrictions as far as where gaming can go at the local level. So we have to deal with the city of Las Vegas and get them through the process. Or if the place is in Clark County, work with Clark County. So,
what do you think about all the YouTubers who record their slot play? I
am fascinated by it. As I said, I've never done a podcast before, and technically I'm fairly illiterate, but I'm paying attention to that, and I'm smart enough to see that the world is changing and that's driving business, and it's fascinating to watch. I think it's a wonderful thing, and again, it's just you have to evolve with your market, and this is a critical component. And those that don't will be left behind. So
Is there like a constitution of the gaming control board, or what's like
do you
the
mean? What do you mean?
the document that controls all the?
there's a statute called the Nevada. Well, there's the Nevada Revised Statutes, and there's a couple that are devoted to gaming, but one is called NRS 463. That's it.
Do you think they'll add a section for YouTubers and?
No. Another wonderful thing about Nevada's gaming versus other jurisdictions is the law was written with the idea that casinos licensees have to run themselves. And so in a place like New Jersey, they'll have 8, 10 casinos and 1,300 agents devoted to this place. The Gaming Control Board has maybe 300 or 400 people for the whole. There's no way they can look over 300 non-restricted licensees, 1,000 restricted licensees. It's up to the licensee. So they expect the licensee to evolve. If there's some place that they want to have a little bit more regulation, like over time they've looked at other jurisdictions, and other jurisdictions approve everybody. If you sell paper to a casino, you have to have some form of license. If you're providing part-time help, you have to have some form of license. Here in Nevada, there's very little of that. It's expanded a little bit. It's like, well, this company's providing software that works in that operates their part of their gaming system. We need to approve them. But overall, there isn't a ton of licensing, and it takes a lot to pull that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There's nothing that actually is in gaming that says you can't film in a casino.
Correct.
That's the casino's discretion. They don't want people filming at table games, which is
Correct.
obvious. But in slots, there's nothing about Gaming Control Board about not filming in a casino.
Right. And there used to be a real reluctance on the part to go through it again. It's up to the licensee's discretion, but the Gaming Control Board goes, are you sure you want to do that? That carries a lot of weight. That may not be law. But the concerns were assisting in cheating. That was the main thing. But now it's just part of the world, and the licensees are expected to just make sure the protections are in place.
Right. The big thing I always say, and you've taught me this, is making sure you don't bring the industry into disrepute.
That's right. And if you talk to the Gaming Control Board, they are hugely helpful in helping you to understand what their concerns are. So, and again, Jonathan is superb at keeping in touch with those people.
Very nice. So are your offices still downtown at the water?
No, I left that, and now I'm at Rancho and Sahara. It's
Next to Chick-fil-A.
yeah.
Do you hang out downtown?
Not much anymore.
You know what? I have to give Dennis credit. It's not there anymore, but he was our biggest supporter of the beer garden when it was there.
Oh, yeah?
Once that was gone, what was the reason to come downtown?
Well, look what we're building right there, Dennis. There's a new wall going up. Right now it looks like Excalibur with the castle.
Yeah, it looks like a castle.
Yeah. But by next week it'll be
Stunning.
Stunning. Yes, exactly.
Are you working on any future concepts?
No. At this point, I'm hoping we'll see some more of these sports book companies come in, because that's very exciting. I don't know what the next big thing is. Sports betting was huge. One thing that we have to see in Nevada, I think is inevitable, is the expansion of online gaming. When they passed it here, it was limited to poker. There's 6 or 7 other jurisdictions that have full online gaming where you can play a slot machine online, you can play any table game online. It's not limited to poker, so we're a little bit behind there, it would seem. But it just hasn't got on the legislature's radar yet. But
what about cannabis in casinos? Do you think that'll ever change? I think.
Wow, that's once the feds take action, then it'll change here. But the feds have to remove it from being a class 1 drug.
But it is funny or interesting or neither that that the governor approves cannabis.
Right.
And ultimately the governor approves the Gaming Control Board, who disapproves cannabis.
And the legislature voted for cannabis. Yes, but it was very easy for the Gaming Control Board to make that decision because there's no downside to it for them. If they had approved it and then it became a big federal issue, which I never thought it would become a federal issue for somebody, but if it did, granting somebody a license could be pretty catastrophic. But the second part of it is there were just a few licensees, and they were mostly local licensees that were interested in that field. So telling a few local licensees, choose between one or the other was easy. The big publicly traded companies couldn't deal with it because they're in other states. So, and it's the big publicly traded companies that probably had more input on that. But that was the Gaming Control Board. It was kind of a no-brainer for them.
Well, I think the no-brainer piece also came in because banking-wise, there is no banking for the cannabis industry.
Good point.
So you got a lot of cash that you can probably don't want to mix with a casino business.
Yeah, it was a mess. And so the way the law is written now is if you're a gaming licensee, you can't be a lender, a landlord, or be in the marijuana business.
Neither can your wife or your kids.
Your wife. I'm not sure about your kids. It's just definitely your wife. But,
So you're saying that my 6-year-old could invest in the cannabis if I wanted him to?
Yeah, make him a member of an LLC. Let's see how this goes. But yeah, it's been very interesting to watch. But in the great scheme of things, it only affected a few licensees. It meant a lot to them, and they had to make a choice. And they're fairly prominent Nevada individuals who made a choice. But when you talk about the huge publicly traded companies, they had already made that decision.
Right.
So, but we'll see. Once the marijuana is made legal at some point, I would expect a change, but not immediately.
What career advice do you have to give to someone starting out in their career path?
This is not mine. I learned it from somebody else. But be comfortable. You have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you're going to grow. And the other thing is...
I love that. That's great.
Details matter always. No matter what field you're in, always think of the details. And one other piece of advice is when you're communicating, don't think about what you're trying to communicate first. Think about what the other person's what the other person's hearing or getting. Always look at it from the perspective of who you're communicating to. With my job particularly, I deal with agents. I have to communicate with them different than I would a partner at a law firm or a gaming control board member. So those are the three things. But the biggest one is be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on the corner of Main Street.
This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dennis.
We'll be back again soon. But in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street. And of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod. And on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan @JonathanJossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.